The meeting to order. We have a quorum. We have an agenda in front of us. If I can get a motion to approve unless there's changes by staff. No?
No changes.
Okay.
No.
A motion to approve. Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Perfect. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Perfect. We have minutes from August 22nd that were in our email packet. If everyone's had a chance to review, a motion to accept, or if there are any changes suggested.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Perfect. Thank you, Jill, for doing those. Then we will move on to our public hearing for the night, which is a conditional use permit to operate and own, permit to own federal firearms license. And we'll go to Clara for that.
Yes, thank you. My thing has gone crazy here. So, the city was contacted actually first by ATF, which is the Bureau of Tobacco Firearms. I'm going to miss all of the acronym, but to say that there was a person who had purchased a home in Fergus Falls, Mr. Steve Nassau, who was looking to transfer a license for a business that helps to transfer firearms, sell firearms, into a home address in Fergus Falls, 1233 Northern Avenue, and that they would require some sort of zoning information from the city in order to ensure that he could have that permit just shifted over to his new address. So I was the one who took that call at first. I believe it also went to our building official, who really didn't have any comment on it at that point. And being fairly new to the planning side of things, I was like, well, I'll dig into city code a little bit, try to figure out, what we say about this, and wasn't really finding anything that was giving me a good answer. So I reached out to the city attorney, the chief of public safety, and to our building official just to see if they've dealt with this question before and how they've handled it. Since the nature of the business does not seem to be a normal home occupation, it involves firearms, which would maybe require some further restrictions. So at the advice of the city attorney, the direction that we decided to go was to request that a CUP be filled out. And then when the CUP is approved and those conditions are placed upon the home, then at that point we can let the ATF know that, yep, they are good to go in the zone that they've chosen, which is a residential zone R2. And that the city of Fergus Falls has these conditions in place, and then as long as those conditions are met, that they can operate legally within the city limits. So that's what we've done here. Mr. Nassau is with us tonight if you have any questions, but and maybe, because I'm going to get details wrong, but maybe you want to just come up and explain what it is that you do in the license that you hold through the ATF.
If you want to just state your name and address just for the record for Jill, that'd be great.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me this evening, by the way. Thank you very much. My name is Steve Nassau. I live at 1233 Northern Avenue. My wife and I just previously moved here from Chaska, and we love it. So just a couple things going on at the house right now, but rebuilding things. But anyway, I've held a federal firearms license, that stands for FFL, if you don't know that. And I've had it for over 6 years. Mine's minuscule compared to, like Fleet Farm or the other companies that sell firearms and such. I keep a limited supply. I'm not a big conglomerate or anything like that. I do have my own firearms through licenses and things like that as well. I'm retired military, and I'm also a previous deputy sheriff. So I know the ways around the firearms and the community and such, but basically I'll certify somebody if they come in and they want to transfer a firearm from somewhere, they can have it sent to me, because by law it has to be sent, sorry about that, by law it has to be sent to a federal firearms licensed person. 9 times out of 10 people in your area, they'll look for the closest one. So basically, the corner of my house, and then I get on the computer, which is the National Instant Background Criminal Check that I can access, and it gives me about 10 seconds. It'll tell me if that person has any, federal warrants, state warrants, any felonies and things like that for people who can't carry, or mental health issues or anything like that. So I have access directly to the FBI database. That's the meat of my business, mostly transfers and such like that. The most I've ever carried on hand in a firearm is probably 3 to 5, and I do have a safe for that. It's a 650-pound safe that's waterproof and fireproof, and I'm the only one with the combination in my head. So that's basically what I do back and forth. But if you go over to these other places, like I'm trying to think of a good one, Cabela's, that's a good example. Go to Cabela's, you know, they have the display all over the background, and with all the firearms and the ammunition and things like that, that's not even compared to what I do. So I'm just a little guy sitting on the side trying to make an extra buck, pretty much. So, but everything's legal. I don't do anything illegal. If so, the ATF would be on my butt and I'd be in prison. So that's the gist of it. But anyway, I'm from moving here. My wife and I appreciate it. And by the way, she apologized for not being here this evening. She wanted to be here. But we're looking forward to living here. We enjoy the neighborhood already. I mean, it's wonderful. Everybody's been so great and nice. And being offered, talking to Claire and such too, that was very nice for you guys to invite me this evening. And I hope you guys decided to let me do what I've been doing for the last 6.5 years.
Well, first of all, welcome to Fergus.
Thank you.
And to your wife as well.
Okay.
We're glad you're here. We're probably going to finish our part of and then open the public hearing. We might ask you to step back up for questions.
Sure.
But thank you for the background. That's very helpful, I think, to all of us.
Yeah.
So, but we'll give you another opportunity, so don't feel like you can't speak again.
No, ma'am. I understand.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, so just some more of the little logistical pieces. We did send out the mailing to within 350 feet of the home parcel. Did not receive any comments from anyone in the community. And I think that means that we can go ahead and do the public hearing portion unless anybody has any further questions for me on the background of the CUP itself.
Can you remind us what you're recommending for
Oh,
conditions?
yes, I can.
Just so everyone's on the same page.
Yep. So these are the conditions that were put together with the input of our public safety chief, Kyle Berggren from the police department, and then also our building official who has done different work with like JK Sports recently, well, within the last couple of years, grew their business, and so they also are doing firearm sales. So some of these conditions are things that he's placed on different buildings. So what we're requesting over and above of just like the normal things that you would request of a home occupation would be having a designated area in the home where the sales or transfers would take place. Only the homeowner or the possible employee, because in a home occupation you can have up to one employee. Generally they're a member of the family. She'll have immediate access to the guns or ammunition, safe storage of the guns and ammunition, which Steve has already assured us they do have, an alarm system with the option to be connected to the police department if enforced by the jurisdiction. At this point, our police department is not enforcing that. They're open to talk with you about an alarm system, but they haven't reached out to me about that any further. So a video surveillance system is also suggested. It's optional per the state building code, but it is recommended. And then applying with all applicable local, state, and federal laws, which is what we're doing here tonight with the zoning compliance for ATF.
Any questions for Clara?
Are you waiting to hear back from somebody with respect to the video surveillance? Is that which?
No, so the police department agreed to have that in there, but then did not offer any further, like they didn't say that they would be requiring that necessarily. So I'm taking it as more of a suggestion, sort of like what the building code says about, hang on, why is it doing this?
We're getting music. So it's more along the lines of it's optional based on the building code at this point?
That's my understanding, so we'll read that section again. But video surveillance system, optional per code, but recommended. And then gun sales locations shall have an alarm system with option to be well, okay, so maybe the option to be connected is the piece that's optional. So that is one, an alarm system that the police department will want to see.
That will be in place.
Awesome. There we go.
Yeah,
That
because
is-
that's how I read it too, that the alarm
Okay.
needs to be there.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay,
Other questions?
no? If not, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anything you want to add or speak to about anything, or specifically these proposed conditions of the permit?
No, I totally agree with the permit,
Okay.
the guidelines, because, it does make sense.
Okay.
It is fair.
Okay. Does anyone else want to speak to this matter? That's a big no back there, so, okay. If not, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for action or discussion.
I guess I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit with the conditions as set forth.
Okay, give a second.
I'll second.
Second. Okay. Any other discussion? Anything else? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that passes. So we're not final decision makers. It'll go on to city council, as I'm sure they've explained to you. So thank you for coming tonight, and I'm sure Claire, someone will be in contact with the next steps.
Thank you so much.
Okay, welcome.
Again, for having me. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Perfect. We will move on unless there's anything else for discussion on the edible cannabinoid. I can't even say that. Thank you.
Cannabinoid?
Didn't practice that on the drive over here.
Yes, so where we have left off with the fun of edible cannabinoid zoning is that at the last meeting, it was a smaller group of planning commission. We did have quorum, but we were missing several members, so.
And too many attorneys. I determined that. There were too many attorneys that were not here.
So, but where we kind of ended at the last meeting was that we are interested in restricting the sale of CBD or THC, however we're going to term it, near school zones. We would like to restrict it so it is not being sold in residential areas, so essentially restricting it to business zones. We want to ensure that any manufacturing that is taking place, if it's happening in a residential zone, it has a CUP process that it's following in order for us to know that it's going on there, and that we can impose certain conditions upon it, and that the manufacturing would be taking place in the industrial zones. And then we also touched on, I think briefly, on the growing of industrial hemp, which we would restrict to RA zones, which is the residential agricultural, and probably not open up the residential agricultural to the sale or manufacturing, just the growing. And I think that was essentially where we ended with it.
That matches my memory, except for the piece we kind of talked about, like how home brewers, like that piece we kind of felt like we might have people that get into this as a hobby versus, we kind of talked about that a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, like a cottage. or
Right.
like-
yeah.
Cottage
And that,
food license and stuff like that.
Right.
Yes.
and now I'm trying to remember, did we send out in the packet, did that include the FAQs from?
The Department of.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is not considered, the manufacturing, sale, whatever, of CBD is not considered a cottage industry. So that's really not, from the state's perspective, an option that I think we can allow at this point in time until there's maybe a little bit more clarity from the state.
So it's just
on
kind of
that.
happening.
What do you mean? We can't allow it? I mean, it's unregulated, right?
No, they say specifically it is not a cottage industry.
Okay.
So we, I think, should not say that we can allow it then, since if the state is saying it's not a cottage industry, we're not going to license people to, or permit people to be doing this outside of the industrial side of things.
Okay.
I don't think we should try to go down the road of allowing that in the city. Does that
Okay,
make
so if
sense?
someone was,
Is it excluded or is
Right.
it just not included? Is it kind of a?
that's what I'm trying to figure out. And then the
Yeah.
other question would be is if you're going to use it as a cottage business, to me, that's different than the home brew grow, you know what I mean? I mean, that's another separate, if you're not doing it as a business, where does that come into play?
Edible cannabinoids are explicitly excluded from the definition of food products found in Minnesota Statutes 340A.01 subdivision 4. So no, the cottage food exemption is an exemption from food licensing and applies to food. So edible cannabinoids cannot be produced under Minnesota's cottage food exemption.
So as a cottage industry, though, in my mind, it would be an assumption that you're selling a product to somebody. So is your question if you're
Right,
just
if you're just,
growing it
if you're the
and
hobby
raising it
grower,
for
how does that
yourself?
come into play?
Well, I'm just, and
Yeah,
I
so
believe
you-
we have an existing business, right?
Yeah, I think we
in
do too.
Fergus Falls that this is gonna impact.
Is she growing? And she should not be growing and manufacturing
I have no
her
idea.
own.
I don't think there's
So
any
you-
growing
and
right
That'd be
now.
my guess.
Growing is
No.
only industrial hemp, and it has to be licensed under the specific
So
Section
growing is not
K
okay.
in the state.
Using under a cottage license is?
But if you're using under a cottage license, are we ever gonna know about it? Because they're
Well, that's
not,
what I'm wondering.
but the problem is
When
they're
you
never
say
gonna let us
using,
know.
what do you mean?
Not like smoking, or I mean, sorry.
I mean, like
Baking with it.
baking.
But is
and
anybody gonna
selling.
ever tell you if they're
You
gonna
cannot
make it? Are they ever gonna tell you
that.
if they're making chocolate chip cookies and making them and eating them?
Well, I hope you did.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying. If,
Right, I
if-
have no idea.
Yeah,
Right.
but that's
Then
just
they'd,
it.
but then they'd be in violation of their cottage food
cottage food
license,
license.
right? Because
It's
it's,
so
that's
cannabis
considered
product isn't,
manufacturing.
yeah.
Yeah, so let's go to our,
Sorry, I think we're getting
No, no,
bogged
no.
down in this. I apologize.
yeah, there are gonna be a lot of rabbit holes that I think we're gonna go down, with this, just because there's still so much unknown about this, and I will say this, almost every other community that's currently dealing with this has it under a moratorium, so they don't have the same I feel like we're on like a fast-paced process here because we can have new businesses popping up without any of our restrictions in place because the city council said no moratorium in Fergus Falls. Almost every other community that's dealing with this right now has a moratorium in place, so they are not getting those new businesses popping up. They've got the chance to kind of study this, take their time a little bit with it. I mean, to the extent that is allowed under an interim ordinance, but so we're on like a little bit of a faster timeline, I feel like. So we're gonna have stuff that's popping up that we maybe haven't seen happening other places, and that we'll have to deal with as it comes.
To me, the retail part of it is the bigger concern than the grow part of it right off the bat. I mean, it'd be nice to do it in all one big package,
Right.
but maybe we can't if the concern is what's really facing us is the retail piece.
Yeah, when I read through this, just initially I had the same thing. I was like, whoa, we're going down like it. Just I feel like we're gonna be putting ourselves in a position where we're gonna be backtracking a little bit as things progress, and
Yep.
so
Yes.
I don't know. So I think
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any way to get around that, but no.
So, okay, so let's backtrack right now. So where we are right now is what we've got laid out in the draft ordinance, and I can pull this stuff up too.
Has council seen this in a work session or anything?
No. No, they have not.
I mean, not that that should direct us, but I was just curious.
One question I have is when it says, restrict retailers from locating too close to a school, what, do we have an amount of distance that is?
There's a blank on the
Yeah,
second
I
page.
haven't,
Oh, okay.
let's see, St. Cloud puts in, it's like 1,300 feet, I think, in their draft ordinance that they've done. I looked through our code and did not see other examples of buffer zones necessarily with any kind of like footage saying, you know, you need this amount of space in between your business and this use. So I'll kind of leave that up either to you guys or to the city attorney if he maybe has an example of what he would like to see, but
So Sarah, when you talk about backtracking, are you concerned about like putting this all together in totality, or are you talking about individual parts? Because if we put together, yeah, I'm just thinking out loud here, but if we say, okay, the manufacturing, if we do one ordinance for manufacturing, one ordinance for growing, one ordinance for this, and then we can repeal that when we're done, but yet maybe we keep this one, then we're only backtracking one, not all of it. I
Right.
don't know if that's an
Right.
option.
It's an expensive option.
It looks like you, well, I'm sorry, I wasn't at the last meeting, I was on vacation. But when I looked through the notes from the last meeting, and I had mentioned this before, that when I had looked, Stillwater, is this modeled off of
Some
what
of the
they are doing?
language is similar. Stillwater focused a lot on density, which is just not a question that we've addressed here.
Okay.
We kind of talked about that, and I think the group kind of came up with, we weren't too concerned because we don't have the same, and not that we're not a tourist attraction, but we're not thinking there's going to be 15 in a row on Main Street. I mean, that was kind of the conversation, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
And that's what they're concerned about. They're concerned about like
Like the
becoming.
whole town becoming like
Yeah.
CBD town.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we're talking about production, so the definition that's given in Minnesota rules is hemp processing. And processing means rendering by refinement hemp plants or hemp plant parts from their natural or original state after harvest. Processing includes, but is not limited to, don't know how to say this word, decortication, devitalization, chopping, crushing, extraction, and packaging. Processing does not include typical farm operations such as sorting, grading, baling, and harvesting. And my question after reading this is, do we consider this definition of processing to cover manufacturing? Because there is not a definition of manufacturing that's given in state statute. It's only this processing.
This is going to sound like I'm not very smart, but do we even know what that is? Have we Googled that word? Does anyone know what that word means?
I can Google it right now.
I think this is, I guess my reading of it is that no,
Okay.
it wouldn't include manufacturing. I think that this is more of the hemp processing from like the harvesting to the like packaging as like a product, but not, are you talking about like manufacturing like hemp derived, or I'm not using the right terms, like
I think that's the correct term.
edibles?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I don't think that
That's what I was afraid
includes
of.
that.
So as far as I'm aware, there is not a definition given of what it is to actually manufacture an edible product beyond what is in the rules, which just says manufacturing.
To me, the manufacturing is you taking something that's already had all this done to
Yeah,
it
you're
and putting it in something else or
something-
packaging it.
That's what I think too.
Yeah,
So this
into an
does
edible
cover-
form or a.
It does cover in
packagable
packaging,
form.
that's what I was just going to say. It does cover
Well,
packaging.
it covers packaging of the processed raw hemp material, not processing of like an end use product.
Right.
Right, that's how I read it.
That would be,
Yeah.
yes.
So we're talking more about taking that and making it into a gummy or into
Or a
a
chocolate or a cupcake or a
brownie or
whatever.
Why wouldn't it be all encompassing though? I mean, look at flour. You take wheat, you'd manufacture wheat into flour. Flour would be manufactured into bread. Why wouldn't you essentially just encompass it all? I don't know if it, regardless if it's hemp processing or manufacturing, if we have an industry that wants to locate into our town, I don't want to do anything to necessarily deter that.
So is there language we can add to this definition that we already have? Maybe we change it from hemp processing to manufacturing, and it encompasses all of hemp processing and includes the manufacturing of edible products or the manufacturing of CBD products.
If we include it all though, then do we start feeling like we have to limit where it can be more?
Well, I think we're only allowing that in industrial, right?
Well, no,
No.
because we discussed having the option for certain kinds of manufacturing to be through a CUP process.
Right, in a business zone.
I think you could just do hemp processing / manufacturing and then, I mean, those after packaging, just put like comma, including, you know, what did you say, Ryan? Including like, you know, making a
Like combination with other
edible
ingredients to make a food
cannabinoid
product.
product, take that term from the definitions, or cannabinoid, is that how you say it? Product.
Okay, so including.
What did you say, a combination of other food products? Is that what you said?
I guess,
Combining with food ingredients.
yeah.
To make a edible, I would use these same terms that we use in our definitions.
Okay. Okay. And then we leave the processing does not include typical farm operations. And then decortication is apparently a
Fibers.
surgical procedure
Yeah.
performed to remove a fibrous tissue.
Yeah.
Wait, that doesn't make any sense.
I was just curious because I didn't know what it was, we should probably know the words worth.
Maybe there's some sort of like, you know, I'm not sure, thing that needs to be.
Should we get a plant doctor on
Yeah.
the commission?
We're good.
We have a botanist over here.
Yeah.
I guess my only other thing would be the security thing that came up in our last public hearing. Is that some kind of a requirement that becomes part of some of this? And what is required of like alcohol and tobacco shops? Is there any security, anything required for them?
Not that I'm aware of. The tobacco license might include some forms of security. Like I think everything has to be in a case. But I don't know that they have
I don't know
any.
if that's realistic for this, but
No.
I just didn't know. I mean, this is the first time out of my years on this that we've said we're recommending security systems or we're asking for that.
But then if we're thinking about, say, home brewing, I mean, there are no restrictions around, like, I can have a bottle of wine sitting on my counter in my home without any restrictions.
And I'm not saying we need it. It's not something we've discussed in the past.
Right.
So like, maybe one of the ways around that is obviously they restricted it to 21 years of age and older. Do we put some restrictions around not allowing minors or under 21 to be actually allowed in the store if the product contains THC?
I don't know, you have like, I mean, Holiday gas station,
Right.
Little Chief,
Yeah, that's a good point.
we have a lot of businesses that
Yeah.
are already.
I mean, I don't disagree that.
Well, right, CBD is one thing, CBD with THC is a different, so, but.
But they have them up on the, like in a case,
Yeah.
and you have to show your ID to
Yeah.
buy them.
Yeah. So, yeah, I suppose if we treat it the same way as tobacco, then what's the difference? Yeah. Talked myself right out of that one.
Yeah. Oh,
That's why we're here. We're talking it out, figuring it out. Okay. So one of my other biggest questions that I have before we can move forward in any kind of way is really drilling down on, are we restricting the sales, or are we zoning cannabinoid products or edible cannabinoid products or hemp-derived tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, food and beverage?
I thought we had landed on THC, but maybe that was a small group last time, but I thought that's kind of where we landed.
See, this is what I mean about, like, these decisions. It's like, I feel like there's just,
Yeah.
Well, so I thought where we trended last time was keeping the status quo as to everything unaffected by this July change in the law, and then mirroring whatever restrictions there are for alcohol and tobacco in terms of, location and that sort of thing.
Specific to THC.
Specific to whatever was affected, I think THC is the term we've been using for whatever was impacted by that July 5th stuff. So basically, everything to the extent allowed by Minnesota law is allowed here, and then we avoid a lot of the potential, pitfalls and that sort of thing by just copying whatever the tobacco regulations are.
I agree with that, because I think we basically said we don't want to regulate more what was okay prior to the July law change. Is that your memory?
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
I second
The
that.
problem with using
I
that
do too.
same
Okay.
language from the July law is that they use CBD absent of THC in all of the legislative language. So in the legislative language, it mentions THC at one point as an allowable, as something that can be allowed in an edible product, but otherwise all the rest of the language is CBD, just overarchingly.
That seems to me to, can we copy and paste the language and not what did the law change? So if we come up with our own terminology, that's fine, but I think that was the idea or the intent, I guess.
Okay,
We lost you?
maybe a little bit.
Okay.
Because I'm still stuck on the fact that not all CBD contains THC.
Right, so I think the CBD that doesn't contain, and if I'm wrong, tell me, if it doesn't contain the THC, doesn't apply.
Okay.
Only if it applies, only if it
Okay.
contains the THC. Am I paraphrasing that?
That sounds right to me, and so what's the difference between THC and like a cannabinoid? I have no idea, but we'll land on the term.
well, I think,
So the
THC.
term is then going to be THC,
Right.
tetrahydrocannabinol.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we all thinking the same thing, or are we all, because I'm
Yeah, I'm
seeing
on
a
that
lot of
same
people
level.
going.
yeah, I understand what Ryan's saying, but I also understand where you're struggling,
Okay.
because the law it's broad, it's broader than that. But if we just want to go with THC,
I think that
That's-
we talked a lot about this, and correct me here, but we basically landed on the CBD that was happening prior to the law. We don't want to affect the market having CBD lotion, or, you know what I mean? We don't want to all of a sudden have all these places having to get regulation that they didn't have to before. Is that where our conversation
well,
went?
this doesn't, because the products they specifically say, for human and animal consumption. It's something.
Right, it's an
It's an edible.
Right.
So
But
we're
then
not
there was
affecting
talk
the
of if we're
clause.
going to go beyond that.
Well,
Define consumption.
Right.
Because the added, the THC piece of it is what allows for a high of some
Right.
kind, and CBD without THC does not.
we kept using, real-life examples, so like the CBD chocolate that they sell at Outstate would now be affected if it's not, currently by what we're doing, would be the idea.
Yes.
Well, I kind of compare this to, if you look at alcohol, and I don't know what the equivalent of this CBD is, but, back in the day, it used to be you could go to the gas station, buy 3-2 beer until, 1 o'clock in the morning. Maybe it's still the case, I have no idea, but 3-2 beer until 1 o'clock in the morning, but they cut off regular sales at 10 o'clock at night. So when you're in college, you used to go to get the 3-2 beer at 1 o'clock in the morning. So whatever the equivalent of cannabis is, that's what I'm looking for. And I think that's where we're at.
I think so, but I don't know if we're all on the same.
But I don't know if the language
Well, I'm
equates
just,
to that.
we went through the definitions, and if we
Right,
want to go the
right.
route that we're saying now,
This is different.
this is different.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that's all I'm saying.
Yep. What do people want to do here?
So what we're mainly talking about is, on that first page, restricting the sale of hemp-derived tetrahydrocannabinol food and beverages, and maybe not all cannabinoid products or edible cannabinoid products. Is that kind of what we're just talking about? So
Well,
maybe just regulating the THC products.
So even in the Q&A, they define it as a non-intoxicating cannabinoid product, and then the second type they define as edible cannabinoids.
Where are you at now?
That's the same in the draft ordinance.
Right. So I think the first one obviously kind of takes care of our concerns with like the creams and lotions and stuff like that, but maybe we go further on to just define it as edible products that we are.
Yeah, so on this first page here, you mean? This edible cannabinoid product includes the THC?
Right.
Right, yeah.
Must not contain more than 5 milligrams of tetrahydro THC in a single serving. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
I'm trying to find the actual update.
Okay, then the other thing, I'm just reading on something here. It says, can you get high from topical THC products? And it says it depends on the THC content. Topical products with higher doses of THC are more likely to allow a greater amount of THC to permeate the skin and reach capillaries, which means the THC will flow through the bloodstream and can cause psychotropic or psycho something effects in some people. Though some CBD products have minute traces of THC, there almost certainly isn't enough THC content there to make you high in most. But with many laws and regulations changing, this could be different in the future.
See, and I don't think, sorry, Beth, I don't think that THC in products beyond edible products is currently allowed. So I think,
Okay.
yeah, so I think all that this law did was say, yes, you can have certain amounts of THC in certain edible products, but I do not think it opened it up to
Everything.
other products.
It says it
so
has.
that solves
It
that.
says it has to be less than 0.3% THC in those products.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we might be-
we're okay on that for now.
Okay for now. Yeah. Well, and that's the other key thing for now.
Right.
Until this potentially changes again, which, I mean, that's just the way that laws work, so
Right.
we'll roll with the punches, but
If you want to read a really, really confusing article in the New York Times, this was PBS NewsHour. Is CBD legal? Here's what you need to know according to science. And it is so complicated because even what you grow, depending on certain conditions, can change the amount of THC that's in a plant. Can put it over the limit or under the limit that
Yep.
these guidelines are talking about. So
which is why Minnesota specifically only allows for the growth of something called industrial hemp, which is highly regulated and has a very specific, like it's a specific thing, and then that industrial hemp is what can, in Minnesota, then be manufactured into these other products.
So, I just want to clarify. Are we proposing that there's two things here? There's the sale, and then there's the manufacturing, right?
Right.
So so when we look at sale, we're proposing that we're only allowing the sale of both cannabinoid or edible cannabinoid, which would include hemp, CBD, and THC products, to business districts where tobacco is also permitted. And we're not allowing for any CUP process in residential zones. It's strictly prohibited.
Correct, but I'm gonna back you up. I think we're only we're only going to be addressing the THC portion of it.
Right.
So, like, the example that I keep using in my head when I'm thinking about this is, imagine that Mary Kay comes out with a CBD line. that doesn't contain THC, are we going to tell every Mary Kay consultant in town that they cannot sell it from their home and they have to go get a storefront?
Right, that's kind of what we talked about, like the pampered chef effect or whatever.
Yeah.
Or do we allow us a
A CUP.
CUP process?
Seems like unneeded bureaucracy for something that really is harmless.
Well, that's what we're doing. We're just prohibiting it. So there is no bureaucracy, there is no path for someone to,
Well, no, I mean, just the THC, though. So if you're talking like a CBD line from Mary Kay that doesn't contain THC, why would we even want to entertain restricting them to go through
well,
that
it's like,
process?
we're allowing someone to sell guns out of their house
Yep.
through a CUP process. I'm just wondering, like, from a
Yeah.
policy standpoint of like,
Well, and I think that's what I've been trying to get to is,
I'm just like
is our
wondering,
policy.
okay, we're allowing guns, but we're not allowing this. It's like, where is the line? I'm just,
Right.
so, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we are allowing the CBD, we are allowing that piece in the
Yeah.
home.
Yep. That's what I've been trying to drill down into is do we care so much about the CBD that does not contain the THC when the THC is the inherently intoxicating? Although according to statute, still non-intoxicating at 0.3% or 0.3 whatever it is, which I don't understand, but
Well, it's kind of like people that go to Walgreens and get enough cough syrup to get high, that
yep.
if you take enough of it, you can, but
Yes.
not in the dose that's
Suggested.
suggested.
I guess personally, my belief is regulate the THC, not the CBD. That's just my personal standing. I can get on board with other stuff though too if we do it. I mean, that's just personally where I'm at.
I agree with you on that.
I agree.
Okay. Now I'm hoping we don't run into something where there's some form of hemp extract that is not classified as THC that is also, but from what I've seen so far, that is not the case.
And I'm not saying that has to be the will of the group. That's personally where my gut is right now.
Yeah. Well, yep, and that's where I think that's where I am hoping that we get tonight is our policy is going to be that we do want to regulate THC. We don't want to regulate the CBD stuff that's already been happening and will continue to be happening.
And I guess regulating the THC to the point that we still encourage business growth, like you had
Well,
mentioned.
The July thing creates a legal gray zone. We clear up the legal gray zone. Done. No additional regulation beyond that.
That's
right?
my gut.
Yes. We
Does
went
that
from
give you
legal
any
gray
marching-
zone to legal gray zone to now maybe less of a legal gray zone, but we're getting there.
Sarah, where's
Not
your head on
specifically,
this?
but-
Because we missed you last month, and I feel like we are kind of just dragging you along a little bit here.
no, I'm just trying to make sure we're not over-regulating because we can always, I just think this is going to be a fast-moving thing, and so, but I'm fine with, I'm just, as these 3 bullet points here, I'm just kind of trying to hammer down like where we're at. And I think it definitely doesn't make sense to restrict all of those things in a residential zone. I think it's just too broad, but, and so
Right,
I'm
so
okay
we
with
lose
staying
the-
with THC.
We lose the cannabinoid products, and we just go to edible THC food and beverages, or do edible is repetitive there, but the hemp-derived THC food and beverages, and just do that in the first bullet point? Is
Yeah,
that
I
what we're
would,
saying?
I would take out edible cannabinoid
Yeah, I
products,
think I would
because you
too.
can,
But if you look-
buy like the little drops to put on your tongue that are CBD, but they
Oh, and
don't
that's
have
edible, yeah.
THC.
Right.
If you look at the definition of edible cannabinoid products, I'm not trying to be the person.
No,
It
that's fine.
includes THC products.
Yeah, but it also includes non-THC
Yeah, but
products.
it
Yeah.
includes both, so I
So we
think,
just don't want to be inconsistent,
Yeah, so we want to say restrict the sale of hemp-derived tetrahydrocannabinol, edibles, and beverages.
Yep.
Okay.
Are we all on the same page on that? We all comfortable with that?
yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think the sale of the edible cannabinoid products is not permitted in residential zones. That needs to go away to the sale of what we just said is not permitted.
And that's just like an extra clarification
Okay.
of what we had discussed regarding the residential zones.
Okay.
Because we were pretty clear that we did not want it in residential. So yes,
1,300
that-
feet from school seems like a long ways to me. I think it's too long for a town of our size, personally.
I can't wrap my head around how far that is.
That would be about 4 city blocks. Typically, they're 350 long, Beth.
Okay.
I mean, to me, like a 1 block radius,
Well,
I don't know.
if you look at what we would send out for a public hearing notice is 350 feet, right? I mean, so if we're assuming that, there's no impact to anybody beyond 350 feet, maybe we stick with that footage.
How does that impact Walgreens to OLB?
We looked that up at one point, the intersection of schools and then that 350-foot radius.
And
Yeah.
the old Target building and that strip mall.
It for sure affects the strip mall. So that strip mall would not be able, I think like the whole strip mall would not be able to have a business selling THC there, which, I mean, personally, I think I'm okay with. Like, if that's going to be our rule, that is our rule.
Or do we get to the point where school can be anywhere and we just allow it
Yeah,
under the rules?
so I guess my thought, when we were talking about the footage restriction, I guess, I was still thinking that we're mirroring it after tobacco, but
There is no
There isn't one on
no
tobacco.
footage for tobacco.
so I kind of go to what's the point of the restriction if we don't see a bunch of kids out smoking or, I don't know. I
Do you
don't,
see a bunch of kids out smoking?
Well, it's not going to matter if the place is a block or 3 blocks away.
Because they're vaping anyways.
Right, yeah, on the way out the door.
No, I agree. I think that that doesn't really get you anywhere as far as like the safety of children. And the burden is on these businesses not to sell it to people.
I agree.
under the
That's the
age of-
legal liability, is
Yeah.
don't sell it.
Right.
Okay.
So then you're busing kids into Lincoln right past a CBD shop? Is that what we want in our community?
Or a liquor store. You know, I mean.
I mean, the thing is,
they
they're gonna
can't
drive by
go
it
there.
on their bus route anyway, somewhere.
I mean,
It's my thoughts. I mean, what difference if they see it out the window there, if they see it out the window a block away? It's just my gut.
yeah, I mean, I don't think.
I don't know.
I don't think these stores are gonna sell the products to a 7-year-old, or, you know, I mean.
Well,
you
right,
know,
I
that-
get that aspect of it. It just,
I do know, because the police department will come to me, if there's been a drug bust, then I have to buffer, and I'm trying to blank what that buffer is right now. But, so if there was a drug bust within, I don't know if it's 1,000 feet or 1,200, then there's further implications, you know, under that.
For the legal law, for the
Yes,
laws, yes.
Yes.
It's kind of like if you're drunk driving and you have a minor in the car, there's more implications kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is up to this group to decide, like what Nate is asking, is that the kind of community that we want? Do we want kids on school buses driving past these businesses? That is your purview to make a decision in regard to that.
They could drive past them anywhere, basically. I mean,
There's a huge CBD banner out right on the way to the bus garage right now as you're driving out toward.
Yeah, I don't think in today's world it's like,
And now that you've said that,
I mean, I
really
get
shouldn't
it.
Be there.
I get it.
Talk about that.
it's unfortunate it's the one road into Lincoln School, and it's like, if we're not gonna put any restrictions on how far it can be from a school, I mean, obviously, that's a great retail location. Personally, I think it's a poor place for a school, but that's just my opinion, so.
I mean, if you're to redesign, there's a lot of things that are poor, you know, as far as that goes. But you do bring up a very good point with that.
That specific location, yeah.
those kids can't read yet, so that's probably is.
And at some point, it goes
That's a
on
loophole.
educating, the parents need to educate their kids. I mean, at some point, it falls back on these families too, to do some of the
For
education.
that specific example, are kids even running free, and then is the business gonna, I just think it's a non-existent problem. If it became a problem in the future, we would add in a buffer, I think.
And I think these kids are, you know, they're released from school, they're walking all over the place, they're riding their bikes. If they can go 1 block, they can go 3 blocks or 4 blocks, so.
My opinion on that location, however, is at least those kids probably aren't going out and buying CBD products.
Exactly,
You know.
that age group, yeah.
Yeah.
I see what you're raising.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with no restrictive setbacks. I mean, I'm just purely, we should talk about that aspect of it though, right? I mean, it should be, what is the perception that we want the community to have on what we're doing here?
I'm definitely in favor of not in residential zones, and I think that covers probably most of our schools, except for that one.
Yeah.
Because really, they're all, well, except for the private. OLV might be the only exception to that, but.
I guess my other question is, there was a television news story, and I don't know where, so don't quote me. It was a national one, that they're dealing with quote unquote food trucks that aren't food trucks, but they're like mobile CBD stores that go around to events. And I don't want to like mess the waters up here, but that is a thing that's happening, like where these mobile things are coming to festivals and different events and setting up their mobile boutique of CBD products.
And we just addressed our mobile food ordinance
Right.
and took out the provision that restricted food trucks from locating near a school. So.
And I don't know that it's
Interesting
considered a
timing.
food truck, you know what I mean?
I
To
don't-
me,
I
it's a
don't think-
retail location.
I don't think we necessarily need to create some, like Ryan said, there really is no issue here. Is there?
Right.
And I'm not saying there is, I'm just
Yeah.
saying like, this could be something
Yes.
that could come.
Right.
So don't all run out and buy a bus at the same time. Trying to get the market. So I don't know, but it's happening in some communities in our country.
Something to, yeah, it's good. I mean, it's,
But again, the burden is on those people, not
Exactly,
to sell to
yes.
anyone underage.
Well, and not to locate in a residential zone. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
That would cover our elementaries at least.
Yep. But I think our language would be, oh man, I don't know. Now, mobile units are more difficult.
I just think it's something we need to have on our radar, maybe not for this, but it at least needs to be kind of on the radar.
Okay. Because I'm trying to think back to our
Do we allow
food
food?
truck ordinance.
Do we allow
don't-
food trucks in residential?
We don't restrict the zones that they can operate in, technically. Historically, they have not in Fergus Falls. They're always at some, either on,
they're where the people are.
they're where the people are. They're at a
Then, yeah,
park,
it's
they're
not-
at a festival.
Even regular food trucks operating in a residential zone, maybe it's not strictly prohibited. It could become a problem in the future, and in the future, we would deal with it.
Right.
I think.
And wouldn't this cover that? Sale of edible cannabinoid products is not permitted in residential zones, even if you're
That
in a
language might be
truck.
strong enough, because we don't have anything that says you can't sell food in a residential zone.
Right.
But we do have this, so, all right. yeah.
So I just wanted it out there that this is starting to happen some places.
Okay.
So are we comfortable moving on to like drafting an ordinance here?
I think we are getting there. Rolf's office has started it, so he has all of this information so far. They have it going into the form that our ordinances normally take. He has not expressed any concerns or comments about this thus far. So I think what we can pass on then to Rolf's office is the fact that we're focusing on the hemp-derived tetrahydrocannabinol edibles and beverages, that we're restricting them from the residential zone. We're going to drop the piece about buffer around schools. We're going to expand the definition of hemp processing to include manufacturing of edible products, correct?
Yep.
And the manufacturing, we're keeping to industrial zones, but opening a path for a CUP in residential areas. Residential
I thought we were keeping it in business, too.
business. Business zones. That must have been a typo. And we're restricting the growth of the industrial hemp to agricultural, the RA district, which we really don't have very many of.
That's what I was going to say. Does that
town-wise.
even apply?
The only
It
time that
could.
would apply,
Nope.
would be if we annexed a new area into town,
That's RA still.
that it comes in RA, and then we
Yeah, we
decide
move it.
what to rezone it to based on, you know, the geographical locations.
So do we allow the growing in industrial with a CUP?
I haven't gone down that path yet, but we
I
maybe.
mean, if it's indoor growing, it's a greenhouse,
It's a controlled.
it's a
area.
controlled
If
area.
it's like if it's a greenhouse use, if it's something like that, then yeah, there is a path for that already in our.
Even for CBD, or for THC,
Industrial hemp.
industrial hemp?
Yeah, I think as long as it would be allowed in the state of Minnesota, I think we would say, because we don't specify what kind of greenhouses, we just have a path for greenhouses.
All I'm saying is when someone reads this and they see the only place they can grow is agricultural, we may need to call it out that with a conditional use permit, it could be permitted in industrial zones.
Is that what we're saying?
Wasn't that what you just said about greenhouses?
No, greenhouses do not need a CUP. Like there is a path forward for them already, just in our permit.
Even if they're growing this?
Yeah, I would say if they're allowed to grow industrial hemp, they would have already gone through the state process that says that they're allowed to do that. In which case, then we would allow it, just
Okay.
by virtue.
As
of
long
the
as
fact
there's a
that it's
path,
greenhouse.
that's fine. I just don't
Yeah.
want people to think there's nowhere in town they can do it
Right.
if they want to put up a greenhouse.
Well, and we do have some random bits of RA land in the city limits that have just remained RA.
And would that be allowed then in a residential zone?
There's some that have houses sitting on RA because we dealt with one a couple years ago.
Yeah, it's residential agricultural, so it's.
There's houses.
Oh, okay.
Typically, you would want to
Uh-huh. Yeah.
shuffle them, R1, the
Uh-huh.
Bs, or the Is, not just let them sit RA typically.
Right.
And realistically, it's not like they're growing corn or soybeans. This is going to be done in a greenhouse.
Well, that would be my gut, especially here. It wouldn't be cost effective. in a greenhouse.
Right, yeah. So maybe it's a moot point that we even discuss that if there's already a path forward for them to grow. If industrial hemp is legal by Minnesota and federal law, then why do we even need to address the growing of it?
So maybe the agricultural residence district just goes away.
Right.
I would agree with, I mean, it might be,
Okay.
we didn't get that far in our conversation last time
Yeah.
to realize
Yeah.
there was already a pathway.
Right.
Yes, so if you wanted to become a grower of industrial hemp, you would go through the state process to get a license to do that. Then I would hope you would start the process of finding the location where you want to do it, and at that point, they would look at the Fergus Falls City Code, which would say like, okay, we want to have a greenhouse, we can have a greenhouse here. If they want to do it outside, then they would have to do it on a residential agricultural lot.
Right.
That would allow for.
Yeah, I think we can take that out.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm kind of thinking, so manufacturing, we changed the definition of manufacturing to define it within hemp processing / manufacturing.
Yes, because
As-
at present, there is not a manufacturing definition anywhere that I found.
Yep, no, I totally understand that, but I'm just going back to, we're gonna allow for manufacturing of CBD products in industrial zones and business zones?
With
Or,
the business zones with the CUP,
So-
industrial zones by right.
are we allowing for hemp processing in those, hemp processing and manufacturing? I just wanna make sure that we brought in that definition so should we add hemp processing and or slash manufacturing into the, just so we're not dissecting a definition into one, just so it's clear.
And were we going to change it to manufacturing of edible products?
I think we're only trying to affect the edibles that have been changed in the law, right?
Although I think in this case, you're asking a really good question. I think in this case, because we're not allowing the sale of these items in industrial zones, we could allow for the broader manufacturing of CBD products as a whole, which would then be sold to other, or like, they would wholesale it then to a different.
Right, and are we
It's full
actually
retailer.
opposed to
Yeah.
it being sold in an industrial zone? I don't know that I'm opposed to it being sold in an industrial zone.
Wouldn't they technically have to sell their product?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to me,
Just not
I'm not
retail.
opposed to it being sold in an industrial zone, personally.
We don't I guess we don't, what we say in industrial zones, if I'm remembering the code correctly, is that you can have kind of a showroom of your products there, but I don't know that we have a lot of examples of that in town. Maybe, I guess the old Cornerstone Cabinets building is an example of where you would see that, because that was an industrial zone. They had a showroom. So
I mean,
it's allowable,
we
but
have
it doesn't
businesses
have
that run
one.
off the internet
Yes.
in industrial zones and ship and sell their products.
Yes. So I think
Is
what
that- yeah.
I'm talking about is storefront. Like a retail storefront is not something we see a whole lot of in an industrial zone.
But if someone wanted to have their production with a retail storefront,
Our code
I guess I
does
personally
say-
wouldn't be opposed to it.
Yeah, our code does say.
You mean like a brewery?
Sale of similar.
Well, that's just, man, Nate. I mean, if you're gonna build a manufacturing facility, like, let's say the chocolate place, Terry, however you say that or whatever,
Yeah.
wants to
Has like
sell.
a tasting room or something.
Yeah.
Which they do have
Right.
in the old Cornerstone building.
So, I mean, to me, I guess I'm fine with the sale being in business and industrial.
Okay.
But I don't know if everyone else is.
Maybe
That's
this
just me.
language isn't even restricting that. Maybe I'm going off.
No,
in left
we're
field.
needing to add to the sale.
And others
Business
might not
and
agree. I mean, you don't have to agree
industrial
with me. My husband does it all the time.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. It just I've driven through Billings, Montana, and I see where their shops are, and it's not a very appealing city, well, to begin with, but it's literally like, hey, this is Jim Bob's auto repair and garage, plus we
So CBD.
sell CBD and other stuff. And it's like, is that what we want? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just, I think more of the manufacturing side of it than we're gonna just sell this to, you know what I
Well,
mean?
I mean, in the perfect world, absolutely. It's set up almost exactly like a brewery would be, or a chocolate factory, or something along those
are
lines. But
selling products that are related to the manufacturing that they're doing. And what our code says is that if you are going to have some sort of sales happening on your property, it's related to the work that you're doing.
Well, then let's call it out that way. Allow it
Yeah.
in commercial or industrial areas, as long as the sale is related to what is being produced on that parcel, and call it out that way.
Yep. So if somebody who owns
yeah,
a business manufacturing car parts is all of a sudden like, hey, we want to also sell CBD, we would
No.
say, no, you cannot.
Right.
Thank you for
But we
asking.
call it out, if you're producing this, if you're manufacturing this, you have the right to sell it in this zone.
I like
Does
it.
that work for?
Yeah.
I do agree with you, what you're saying, because we have properties in Michigan. So I'm going to the UP quite often, and where they're selling it in Ironwood, Michigan, as you drive through, there isn't residential, there isn't, thank God, or schools, but that's one of the first things you see as you drive through
right.
Ironwood, Michigan, and visiting my son in Colorado. Of course, it's legal there. It's despair, if everybody did what they're supposed to, but I will say by 28 years with the city, and I'll just in community development with Clara, whatever we put in the code, somebody will construe it or try to twist it on us, because this last 6 to 8 years, I've seen questions asked that I hadn't seen in the previous 20. And I'm just, broad swipes, nothing about this topic. So just, I would agree, taking it slow so you don't get too far down the rabbit hole, and then you're trying to scramble back up out of it, but.
So
And
then,
my only, maybe it's semantics, is the term greenhouse versus, building industrial settings. I hear greenhouse and I think of Nature's Garden World or here at Burger with the plastic domes.
Yeah, but it could be a metal building that no one can see anything inside with grow lights.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, we
There
don't
again,
really
it's just a
define what that
definition.
is.
Right.
Secured building, alarm system.
Inside grow environment.
That's a good point, though. If we don't define what a greenhouse is, do we need to do that and say, so, because we don't want somebody setting up
That's
just
my
like
only
a
thoughts.
fly-by-night building, because those are gonna collapse in the snow, they're gonna blow away, we
Or-
restrict them in residential zones.
We're
we can't
talking
have
about
that.
alarms for a guy who's gonna be selling potentially firearms or ammunition, but then somebody goes into, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a building that might be applicable, and all of a sudden then there's no alarm system, and then they're breaking in and stealing product.
Okay, but let's back up a second, because legally today, I could go plant my field instead of soybeans in industrial hemp, and it would just be out in the open.
True.
So if it's from agricultural standpoint, and if it's legal, what do we care what type of building they grow it in?
What we do care about is building code. We
Right.
care that they're
Yeah.
putting up buildings that adhere to Minnesota State Building Code.
But that's,
But if they want to pay $1 million to heat
They
a
need to
plastic
get that
hoop
in this
barn,
ordinance.
that's on them.
No, you're right. So that would be, if somebody comes in and says, I'm going to put up a greenhouse, we would say, okay, you go get a building permit, and then our code official, or our building official would say, your building must adhere to state building code.
right.
Okay. I'm talking myself out of a definition of a greenhouse then.
No, you're right, it can be out in the open.
But yeah, yes, you can.
We'll probably be rewriting this in 2 hours.
Do we, sorry, my last question is.
No, go ahead.
Do we need to add a definition? Just pull out the last sentence of the edible cannabinoid product and add a definition for hemp-derived THC? Just to have that, an edible, that contains 5 milligrams of, or what, or more, or any.
Okay.
It's probably not necessary, but if we have a term that we're using as a term, I always
I
like
would-
to include it in the definitions, even if
I
it's a
agree
very
with
simple
you.
definition.
I agree with you, and I would like that, and I did, now that you have said that, when we first started talking about this, I remember spending like over an hour just trying to find the definition of THC in any of Minnesota rules, or honestly anywhere, and it did not exist. So yes, I think we should do that. And the definition will match what is already stated in the rules, but is not stated as a definition.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then, how does this goes to Ralph to finalize? We don't have a public hearing and we see it again, or we don't see it again until a public hearing? Or how does this work?
That's up to you guys. I mean, we can have Rolf put this into the form of an ordinance. We can do another meeting where we're looking at it and we're making sure that we're happy with it. And then we can, at that meeting, call for the public hearing and say, this is when we're going to host it, and we can do all of our notifications. At that next meeting, do the public hearing, then kick it to city council.
Is there any point in
Or-
sending a draft ordinance to a work session of city council, just as a feedback before we
Probably.
open this can of worms? Not that anyone's gonna read the notice and show up, but do we just wanna kinda see if we're all kinda close on this whole thing?
Yep. So what I will suggest we do is bring a draft forward to a committee of the whole meeting and have them address it then.
So I think that we should see a draft.
Before it goes to city of the
Before
whole,
it goes
I
to the
agree with
committee of
that.
the whole.
I do too.
Just to make sure that like.
I do too.
Yeah, and then once we kind of have a more firm, then we send it there.
I just
Then
don't want
it
to get
comes
into
back to us for
publication
public
costs
hearing.
that are crazy, and then we're redoing it, and we have to publish it again, and it gets expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know if we need a meeting, I mean, I don't know, I feel like we don't want to, we wait a month to see a draft, then we're 2 weeks out from a committee of the whole, then we're another month out because of the noticing, and then we're not voting on this, and we've basically blown 6 months in this process. And we don't have a moratorium, which keeps getting raised as a concern.
Here's what I will say about that is, while I understand it is a long process, I also do think it's important for the public to be able to engage in it, even if that means coming to a meeting when we're still just discussing it and listening to it. Because all of these meetings are open to the public, and so they can see the packet beforehand, they can read it, they can reach out to you guys beforehand and ask any questions that they have. So I would recommend that we don't go the route of you guys just internally seeing a draft and then moving it forward that way. I would say, let's bring a draft to a public session.
That's fine, and all I was going at was still a public session, but when we went to once a month, which I'm probably the only one that was still here at once a month, or when we were twice a month, was we said we'd go to once a month unless there was a need for another meeting. So do we want to do 2 meetings in October is where I was going. Because we left that open when we changed our structure.
Yeah.
Not that
Sorry, I
anyone-
didn't understand.
But
Yes.
you kind of remember that conversation when we went from twice a month to once, but it was, if needed, we'd do our other Monday.
I'd be down for a special session if you guys can make that work.
Are we signing the city attorney up for something?
Right, depending on their timeline.
Yeah, I was
Right.
gonna say,
Yeah.
let's
Let's see where Rolf
just send
is
it
at.
to Rolf.
Maybe it's a
and
regular
see if he can get it
October
back
and
to
early
us.
Right.
November or something, but.
Right, and maybe it's not the next one that's the special, but maybe it's somewhere in the process, it makes sense to do the extra meeting.
Okay. I'll send it to Rolf tomorrow morning, and then he can let me know how long it might take for them to draft it. I don't think it will take them very long. And then I will reach out to everybody and say, here's what the timeline looks like. When would we want to do a special session if that's the direction we're going?
Sounds good.
Okay. Perfect. So any final thoughts, comments, anything at all?
No, but I think we have a staff update. Right?
We do. Hey, we have Mark Jorgensen with us here tonight. Mark Jorgensen has officially joined the Community Development Department,
Yay.
having abandoned the engineering department. I'm just kidding.
No one go turn your water on or your sewer.
He is now our planning and GIS specialist within the
Congratulations.
Community Development Department. Yep.
And do we keep you too?
Yes, so we'll be, Mark is going to be handling a lot of the, like the day-to-day planner activities. So when people are calling and like, I want to put up a fence, where do I put my fence? Like, Mark's your guy. And then we'll tag team the meetings like we've been doing, and
I'm the sign guy now too.
yep, Mark's got the signs.
Good luck to you.
Yep.
Signs and billboards.
Yep. So, but Mark has like a huge depth of knowledge about the city, he worked really closely with Gordon, who was our planner for 30 years. So he's got a lot of the institutional knowledge that we just did not have in community development before. So I'm very grateful to have him on the team.
Welcome.
Thanks.
And he is now in April Zumac's old office. So we did a bunch of switcheroos. So
Where's
if you-
April now?
So April is in Jason's old office, and Jason is now in Mark's old office. So Jason moved into the engineering department. Mark is out next to the lunchroom, and then April's on the other side of him.
But Jason's still not, I mean,
He's
everyone's
still-
titles stayed the same.
Jason's still
Okay.
building official, but
Did you get a window?
Finally.
That a buddy?
yeah.
Yeah, that's important.
Perfect. Anything else, staff or council updates?
No, just thank you guys for going through this process with us.
Then there's a meeting for Downtown Riverfront Council that I think everyone saw an email on, probably.
yes.
Or for
so-
not Downtown River Council, but Downtown Historical District.
Yep. So SHPO is sending up 2 of their staff members. So one of them is their National Register historian. Her name is Ginny Way. She's going to come up and she's going to do a session about historic districts, because the topic of making a downtown historic district has come up again through the Downtown Riverfront Council and through the Heritage Preservation Commission, which is a commission of the city. So she's going to come up and talk about what that actually means, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about it. And then we'll see kind of where the discussion takes us. And if we go down the route of looking into historic district, we'd have to do a study that would tell us if we're eligible or not. But council wanted to know more about the program itself before they said yes to doing any further studies. So
Great.
yeah, that's October 3rd at 4:30. And it would be a really, like, if you ever have questions about even other National Register properties in town like that, she'll just be able to tell you a lot about the program. So it should be really interesting.
Anything else from anybody? Okay, if not, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.